Welcome to another edition of the Tom Green Podcast. As always, we are cracking open a fresh new edition of the Tom Green Podcast. That is a Coke Zero this time, not a Diet Coke and not a beer. So I like to be sober for the show, unless I'm having fun. So with that being said, we are introducing our guests as this is an NBA show. I brought in a guest that requested to come on the show. They are two guys from Iowa, and their Twitter name is @ShootersTouchIA. We'll see if they actually have a shooter's touch like Michael Jordan or whoever, or the players in the Utah Jazz like Donovan Mitchell. But they are Viet and Bryan Claude from Shooters Touch IA. Welcome to the show, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. We really appreciate you having us.
You bet. And John Stockton, of course, is impressed by your shot. We'll see. But before we get started, I got to give a big shout out to the high school team that I do the PA announcing for, the Essexville Garber Lady Dukes, as they just won the Tri-Valley Conference Eastern Division title tonight outright with a victory over the Millington Cardinals. So congratulations to the Garber Dukes, coached by Kim Klein, and her daughter, Ellie Klein, who is a senior, eclipsed 1,000 points in her high school career. So congratulations, Ellie, and congratulations to the Dukes. With that being said, we got some NBA talk. First, before we get our NBA talk going, tell us about Shooters Touch IA.
All right. Well, like you said, we're two guys from Iowa. We're from Iowa originally, played college basketball in Iowa, and honestly, just have a passion for basketball and everything that surrounds it. So on the Shooters Touch, you'll hear everything from NBA information to just following the colleges here in Iowa. The University of Iowa, Iowa State, Drake, and the University of Northern Iowa as well. So that is the Shooters Touch.
Sounds good. So you guys have played for the mayor, perhaps?
No, watched the mayor coach quite a bit, though.
I did a couple summer camps with the mayor, so I know a little bit of what his excellence, what it brings, though, and the kind of person and kind of character he is, though, that's for sure.
Oh, yes, definitely. And, of course, Ames, Iowa loved him. So, just to clarify, are you guys Iowa State fans, or Northern Iowa? We'll start with Bryan. Who's your team?
Yep, so I grew up a Hawk fan, and I've been a lifelong Hawk fan, so I definitely lean towards the Hawks, and then I actually did my grad school at Drake, and so then I would say a close second is the Drake Bulldogs, and as Adam will kind of explain, is kind of how we have our coverage split up with our podcast and the way that we do things is given the two teams that obviously I lean towards. Those are the two teams that I kind of cover more of, and then Adam a little bit more on the other side of things.
Gotcha. So make sure that Drake doesn't show up to a Drake game, because we know how that goes.
Right. No, we got a pretty, I don't know if you've seen it or not, they got a pretty cool t-shirt with the Drake Bulldog has Drake's head on it. That a lot of those students that you see kind of bouncing around through campus a little bit. Gotcha.
So, Adam, your Iowa team.
Yeah, so I actually played at the University of Northern Iowa, so they're by far number one, and if I had to pick number two, I'd probably say Iowa State. And like Bryan said, that's kind of who we more or less cover, I guess you might say, on our podcast, so it definitely works out well.
Now, I also got to ask, were you on the team when Northern Iowa upset overall number one Kansas years ago?
I was not. That was about 2 years after I left. But Ali Manesh, actually, it's funny enough, he played junior college with my brother, so I knew and I still know Ali pretty well, actually.
Awesome. Might have to bring him on the show as well at some point. So that is your Iowa background. In fact, I've only been to Iowa once, and I visited Dyersville. And, of course, we know what's in Dyersville.
We do.
the Field of Dreams, and I got to play a little bit at the Field of Dreams, which was awesome. And it's exactly as the movie shows, with the exception of it being there's a little concession type stand that sells souvenirs and memorabilia.
Yeah, that's a neat venue. It's definitely obviously if you're a baseball fan or have seen the movie, it's definitely worth the trip. We actually have another friend of our podcast who just recently took his bachelor party and went to the Field of Dreams, and they got a little game going and took some shags and did kind of the whole 9 yards there. Yeah.
That's awesome. I got to get back to the Field of Dreams at some point. So, moving from baseball to basketball, we're talking about the NBA trade deadline. It has come and it has gone. We're looking for some winners and some losers here. We're going to start with winners. And because Adam's team was a big winner in the NCAA tournament years ago, we're going to start with Adam. Winners of the trade deadline.
Awesome. So I think one of the big winners was the Toronto Raptors. Landing Marc Gasol, a very, very skilled big man, a needed big man for their front line who is a little bit depleted right now, and to add to their current roster, with Serge Ibaka, I feel like he'll be a very good number 2 to Marc Gasol, who still has 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years left in his prime, and just with the stretch coming here, the second half of the season, that he can bring them, essentially probably the number 1 seed in my opinion.
And let's not forget about Pascal Siakam as well. He's been a great. Of course, I play a lot of DraftKings. I follow Mike McClure and Jacob Gibbs on Twitter and play some of their lineups. They've been high on Pascal Siakam, who's been a great asset to this team as well as Gasol. Continue.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I think that, like I said, kind of adding Marc Gasol's arsenal, you might say, of what he can bring to a team, what he brought to Memphis, I think makes them the front runner in the Eastern Conference if they already were not the front runner in the Eastern Conference.
I had watched a little bit of a Raptors game a couple nights ago, and I had to do a double take because I'm like, am I sure that's not Valanciunas still playing? Because
right.
Gasol and Valanciunas look alike.
Yep, and actually, a little, I guess, a nugget for you. Their head coach, Nick Nurse, played at Northern Iowa, and he did a couple basketball camps in my hometown when I was little. So Nick Nurse kind of has a close place in my heart, I guess you might say.
So he nursed you to become the player that you are now.
Essentially, he did, yes.
Awesome. So we'll go to Bryan and now. Tell me a winner from the trade deadline.
I think one of the teams that I have down is the Clippers.
Okay.
Which seems a little interesting because it seems more like they are obviously unloading, which I think is ultimately the goal. Obviously, with them being able to, first of all, dump Blake Griffin and get 2 first-round picks in Tobias Harris, and then be able to move Tobias Harris for another first-round draft pick, you're essentially sitting now with 3 first-round draft picks and a ton of cap space going into having a free agency where there's some big names out there, and many of them have voiced that they want to get to LA, and so I think more than anything, just the ability for them to clear space and obviously have some good pieces on good contracts out there and lose all their bad contracts and have Doc Rivers out there and setting themselves up, I think, for maybe not necessarily this year, but as we look for the future, as far as them to be able to make some waves.
Definitely. And I'll give this question and answer a bit a snake format. So I'm going to give you 2 winners here. And my first winner is going to be the 76ers, as you had just said. Getting rid of Tobias Harris and Boban Marjanovic. Let's not forget about him. Another Mike McClure DraftKings tidbit, Boban Marjanovic. Great guy. Of course, when he was in Detroit, he was he was that one guy that everybody likes, and I believe he was that same way with the Clippers as well. So that trade for Harris and Marjanovic really helps the Sixers' depth, definitely coming to the playoff run, because the Sixers, I think the Sixers right now are where Michigan football is right now. They're a good team. They will win a lot of games, but they have to get over the hump and win the big game. And right now that hump is Boston. And we saw that last night even a couple nights ago, with Boston once again beating Philadelphia. I actually saw the meme where, if you've seen the SpongeBob episode Chocolate with Nuts, SpongeBob and Patrick approaches this middle-aged lady's house, and they want to sell chocolate in bags. And of course, SpongeBob is Joel Embiid. The bags, as he zips each one empty bag, are L's. And the middle-aged lady is Al Horford. Now you can see that meme play out in your head. So, Sixers are a definite winner of this trade deadline. Another closet winner of this trade deadline, in my opinion, is the Dallas Mavericks. They might not win the trade deadline this season, but if Porzingis gets back to health, he will definitely make a big impact on this Mavs team with Luka Doncic, and perhaps this might sway Nowitzki to play another year. We'd like to see Dirk, of course, get the all-time record with field goals at TD Garden, don't we? So maybe this sways Dirk to play one more season, but the Mavs, I think, are another winner of the trade deadline. In fact, another nugget, Dirk played with Hardaway Sr. to start his career, and now he's getting to play the end of his career, perhaps, with Tim Hardaway Jr.
That's a long career right there.
Definitely. So now we'll toss it over to Bryan for a second winner of the trade deadline.
Yeah, and you actually took mine. That was the other one that I was going to talk about was the Mavs. Just to add to that, with
Sure.
them, obviously it's the situation of moving Harrison Barnes in the middle of the game, and we kind of all saw how that went down and the breakdown of that. And obviously, connecting back to Iowa, we're very prideful of the players and people that come from Iowa. And so Harrison, being from Ames, is a close connection with us. But in all reality, when you start to break down the numbers of his contract and where he was at, to be able to, like you said, with the Mavs, being able to move him and move that contract, actually in return from the Suns get Justin Jackson, who is only 2 years removed from being a 14th pick overall, and younger, has a much higher, or has a good upside, and then has a much better contract. So gives them an option to maybe possibly have some more room, some wiggle, like you said, depending on what happens with Dirk and some of these other contracts. But with Porzingis and Luka, I think they're definitely starting to kind of get some pieces together that they really like, and starting to be able to have some room in the cap space as well.
And a trade, I will add that a trade that I wish would have happened was Wagner to Dallas, because I would have liked to see Mo, a Michigan man, play with his idol, Dirk. Would have been something to see. So we'll go ahead and throw it to Adam. Adam, your second winner of this trade deadline.
So I'm going to go ahead and go with Philadelphia 76ers. Not necessarily because of who they got, but because of who they got rid of. As we've all been, kind of from outsiders looking in, I guess, following Markelle Fultz and what's been happening to him, and just, I guess you might say, drama behind that. Number one, getting rid of that. Number two, getting rid of somebody who, from all I've seen, is not going to be getting any better anytime soon. And I know he was the number one pick. I know they essentially wasted the number one pick on him. And I don't think they got what a number one pick should have got back from that. But at the same time, they got rid of somebody who probably in my mind wouldn't play a whole lot, if at all, in the future for something, or somebody, some trades that they could actually utilize. So my number two winner would probably have to be the Philadelphia 76ers.
Gotcha. And our buddy Ryan Drinkwater from Philly's Finest Sports Network, who found out that we were recording before we actually did, will be very pleased to hear that his Sixers were in unanimous agreement, a winner of this trade deadline. So
Absolutely.
So he'll be happy with that, and we'll have a chat with Ryan next week, focusing more on the Sixers trade. So yeah, we have winners of Toronto, Philly, as well as Dallas. Now we focus on losers, and we'll start with Adam, of course, even though he is a winner. We have to talk about the other side as well. With winners come losers, and unfortunately, we talked before the show a little bit about the mayor. The mayor, unfortunately, did not do very well in Chicago. So that's kind of that part of the winners and losers thing. So loser of the trade deadline.
Loser of the trade deadline. I'm going to go with the obvious one here and go with the Los Angeles Lakers. Not getting Anthony Davis, and honestly, essentially not having the pieces to trade for Anthony Davis was a big hit to them. I think that they, once that trade, once it was announced that he wanted to trade, I think that they were, at least Lakers fans were, I guess, kind of expecting to get him. And then pretty much, honestly, offering the entire team to the Pelicans and getting turned down or rejected every single time. I think that now that it's going to have to wait till the summer, or at least after the season, that there's going to be more competition, and I still don't think that they're going to be able to muster what they're looking for, what the Pelicans are looking for Anthony Davis. So my number one loser is going to have to be the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, and a question that came to my head as you were speaking there about Anthony Davis was it possible that LeBron and Kyrie team up once again next season, as Kyrie's going to be a free agent on July 1st?
It was leaked, or the press blew it up, however you look at it, that Kyrie was potentially thinking about maybe joining LeBron, which, and then a week later, I think it was Danny Ainge said something about July 1st, the Boston Celtics and Kyrie are going to get married, essentially making it known that they're going to sign him for the long term. So this summer is going to be very, very interesting, with AD out there, with KD potentially making a move too. There are some big names out there that are looking for new places of employment.
Yeah, definitely. July 1st is going to be quite a time in the NBA. So we'll turn it over to Bryan here, a loser of the trade deadline.
Yeah, so one thing I have is the Wizards.
Okay.
Not so much in the deals in which that they did, but the deals in which that they didn't do. Obviously, that team is a dumpster fire right now, and more than anything, they need to start moving some assets and get some of those guys out of there. Obviously, John Wall on the bench now with the injuries, but you have Bradley Beal, who's essentially in the prime right now. Whether or not they were shopping him and trying to move him, it's hard to tell a lot of that stuff. Unlike the Lakers and Pelican situation, they don't usually kind of leak those until things are agreed and are final. So, I just think that it's a situation for them where there's just expectations, and I know we're going to get to a little bit of that what we've seen here throughout the first half of the season, but they've had some good pieces, they've had some good teams, and you mentioned before getting over the hump in the playoffs, they haven't been able to do it, and then this year it's just been a disaster. So I thought that I would have seen them be a little bit more active and shop a few guys and try to get some picks and build for the future.
Yeah, definitely interesting about the Wizards, because the Wizards were expected to really be a bang or bust team, and really 10 games into the year, we knew that they were going to be a bust.
It was not pretty, that's for sure.
Definitely. So to my two losers, first one is not so much the Lakers, but Anthony Davis. Why is Anthony Davis a loser here at the trade deadline? Because he is still a Pelican, and the New Orleans Pelicans still have to play him, or else they will be fined $100,000 for every game that he rests. Thank you, Rest Rule and Adam Silver, for that. It's like if you were to break. Since it's Valentine's Day, I'll mention a relationship scenario. It's like your ex saying, "We're breaking up, but you have to stick with me for 4 months." That's pretty much what's happening with Anthony Davis right now. Not pretty.
Right.
So, and of course, the Lakers being a loser as well for not getting Anthony Davis, I felt that they pretty much gave the Pelicans the house for Anthony Davis, and the Pelicans gave them back a finger, or maybe the Smoothie King baby. That thing just creeps me out. I'm just saying it creeps me out. The Smoothie King baby. So Anthony Davis being my number one loser of this trade deadline. My number two loser. This one seems pretty obvious. The Knicks. I mean, you get Dennis Smith Jr. Great. Good player, but you lose a guy that perhaps could have been your franchise, Kristaps Porzingis, which I did hear the rumors that Porzingis wanted out. So that wasn't bad. That wasn't too bad that they traded him, but I mean, what in New York, what is there to root for? I mean, I mean, maybe Stephen A. Smith to get it to explode, maybe. The Knicks, man, they've stunk since my existence. I was born in 1995. They've only made one finals appearance in my lifetime. I mean, if you are a Knicks fan, I mean, what is there to root for the rest of the year besides extra ping pong balls in the lottery? Oh, and if we remember Stephen A. Smith's ran on Porzingis, they might even blow this time, tanking. So I don't know what to think about for this Knicks team. I guess I'll just say thank God that Enes Kanter is not in a Turkish prison right now. He's in Portland, thankfully, as that saga is continuing. But that's a story for a different day. But the Knicks, I don't even have to mention three players. And yes, they are an obvious loser of this trade deadline. It's, yeah, thank God I'm not a Knicks fan. If you follow the Twitter account, Mike Zimmer's Ears for the Vikings, I had him on a podcast earlier. He's been talking about the Knicks a lot, it's like you lost, and he's saying they've lost the next 5 years. It seems that way in Madison Square Garden. So lo and behold, the Knicks stink. And let's see if that's their number two loser. And maybe not, but I had to bring the obvious point out. Brian, your number two loser of this trade deadline.
I think going with your theme, the number two loser on this trade deadline has to be LeBron.
LeBron, okay.
And obviously his desire to want to try to go out and get some guys to surround himself with to be able to make a push here in the second half of the season obviously did not work out in his favor, but even more than that, obviously with the way the situation was handled, and have these young players who, ever since that conversation kind of started, you had some of these young guys, and Kuzma specifically was one that I was always saying that if you're a Laker, there's no way you can move him. And when his name got released along with essentially the rest of the team, and you can have anybody, and we'll give you anybody and everybody outside of whatever they were asking for 6 first-round picks or something crazy like that. Other than Kuzma, and some of those young players, I know LeBron wanted to bring in obviously AD and some guys to make a push, and wasn't able to. But more than that, then what we've seen is what it's done to their chemistry, and a little bit of that uncertainty, and what's going to happen now and what's going to happen next, and how much change are they going to go through, and so I think that at the end of the day, I mean, not only did LeBron not get what he wanted, but he's got himself in maybe a little bit more of a stickier situation than he ever anticipated.
Yeah, and a nugget to add to your point, LeBron's Lakers are 28 and 29 at the time we have recorded, which is the latest that a LeBron-led team has been under 500 since his rookie season in Cleveland. So very frustrating times for LeBron James especially. So Adam, your second loser of this trade deadline.
Number 2 for me is going to have to be the point guard Mike Conley. Losing Marc Gasol, and essentially being on a team that is rebuilding currently and having a contract. I believe he's set to make about $32.5 million next season. So he'll have to try to if he wants to leave Memphis, if he doesn't think there's a permanent home for him there, he'll have to try to test the trade market this summer, and that's a pretty big contract for somebody to take over for a 31 or 32-year-old point guard. When the trade deadline was coming a week or so away, he thought that he may get traded, and like I mentioned, now he's kind of on a team that is essentially rebuilding. Which being in your prime right now, you don't really want to be on a team like that because of the fact that you don't have very many years left in your prime. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to Mike this summer. But number 2 on my list would definitely have to be Mike Conley.
Yeah, and to add to your point, I'll read you a little snippet from Sporting News, which I have pulled up on my computer. Loser Mike Conley. Gasol managed an escape to win a contender, but Conley was not so lucky. Despite rumors that had teams like Utah and Indiana sure playoff entrants interested, heck, even Detroit would have a chance if it had done a Conley deal. Nothing got done with Conley, and he will finish out the year in Memphis. But take heart, Mike. There will be a market for your services in the offseason.
Right, I think there will be. As you mentioned, there were 2 or 3 teams that were interested here in him as the trade deadline was nearing. However, it'll be I think more. What's going to interest me to watch is the fact that he has that huge contract, and our team's going to be willing to obviously pay that. I mean, if Indiana, if Utah wanted to make a deal right now, they probably could have. And so why would they want to make it after the year? So it'll be. I'm very interested to be watching that. But you're right. I mean, there was a couple teams that were interested, and he still has a couple of years left, probably in his prime, and he's definitely a serviceable point guard. Probably above average in the NBA. So it'll be good to see him go somewhere else, I hope.
Yeah, and Mike Conley doesn't want to be like Walter speaking to Jeff Dunham about his prime. Your prime was 20 years ago. So that is your winners and losers of the trade deadline. And now we move to another event that's coming up on Sunday night, the All-Star Game. Now, if you're me, I'm more interested in seeing the skills competition than the All-Star Game is. The All-Star Game lacks defense, which I like defense, unlike other people. So I guess we'll really look forward to what are you guys excited to see from this All-Star weekend? We'll start with Bryan this time.
Well, you mentioned it. The skills competition is always kind of fun, but I think that one of the things that I'm probably most excited for is the Rising Stars game, the U.S. versus the world. Just because, more than anything, I like to see the young players. Like you said, there seems to be there's a little bit more in it for them. Their real first opportunity to kind of be on a stage and show a little bit what they can do. And so there does seem to be maybe slightly more defense, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of see some of these players, play together and what they can do. And it provides, for an exciting outlet. And I think with the format, with the world versus the U.S. too, it's always fun. I mean, we talked about this previously on our podcast. Obviously, when it comes down to it, we're always find ourselves obviously cheering for the U.S., but just the teams too, and some of the young guys on there. obviously the format's a little bit different, which is nice to mix it up. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that Rising Stars game.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a treat. Perhaps a college all-star game, as I'm really one of those people that doesn't like seeing these one and dones because it seems to devalue the college game a bit. But this Rising Stars game seems to slightly fill that void, as you were talking about a lot of great stars that will start NBA All-Star games at some point in their career. So we'll toss it over to Adam here. What are you excited to see from this All-Star weekend?
So outside of the actual All-Star game, because I really do love watching, all those amazing basketball players. I mean, essentially the 12 to 15 best players in the world on the same court. I would have to go with, I guess, the 3-point contest. As a shooter back in the day, I like to watch the guys chuck it up there, and I love to. If nothing else, watch how their form changes as they fatigue, and all that intricate stuff that only a couple people probably pay attention to. But on a previous podcast, me and Brian went back and forth on who we thought was going to win that, and I'm excited to watch my guy Dirk. I picked my boy Nowitzki to come away with the title there on his essentially his farewell all-star weekend. So I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah, for me, I'm excited to watch the 3-point contest, also the slam dunk contest. The slam dunk contest has devalued over the years because eventually you get so many tricks that they just repeat, they're recycled, they're run out. But Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon, of a few years past, have really brought back the slam dunk contest, and perhaps if they play again this year, that'd be great to see. As for 3-point, go ahead. Alrighty. As for the 3-point contest, yes. If we see Dirk win it, that'd be amazing. Perhaps that would be the way to end his career, to win the 3-point contest. So I like 3-point contests. I like the slam dunk contest. The All-Star game, well, first team to 200 wins, as far as I think.
Which for people who like defense, that's probably not the best game to watch, huh?
Yeah. But, hey, it's showcasing their talent, so
exactly.
You kind of can't argue with that. So I guess I'll ask one more question about the format. Do you like the format of Team LeBron versus Giannis?
I do. I think it's neat to obviously have something a little bit different and mix it up. I think as you look at the roster system and just the way that the league's set up, if it was the traditional East versus West, it could get ugly real quick. With obviously all the players that are loaded up on the West side now, and so the fact that you kind of go back and go a little schoolyard and do captain's pick, I think is neat. I think it's a neat concept. Obviously, last year with Curry and LeBron, I think just the fact that it was those two maybe added a little bit more intrigue to it. Obviously, this year I still continue to keep LeBron in there for good reason. It's neat. Obviously, they listen to fans and talking heads and everybody, and went ahead and televised the selections, which is kind of neat too, because you know that those guys like to know where they fall and how things shake out. And so, it's all about just obviously making an extra dollar and how can they extend it and how can they have more hoopla around it. And so, no, I think it's neat. I think it'll run its course. Obviously, I don't think that this is going to be something that they'll probably continue for the next 10 years. But as we have it sit now, I'd say, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, as for the schoolyard comment, I wonder if Rosie, the Queen of Corona, will be there, and if Julio is going to meet you or I down by the schoolyard, quoting Paul Simon there. Adam, do you like the format?
Yeah, I do. I think, kind of, I guess echoing what Brian said, that it almost had to be done with the players that are in the Western Conference. I mean, on our podcast, we were talking about it, that, you look at the Western Conference, the starters and the reserves, and you have Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook as a reserve in the Western Conference. Like, that is
Continue.
I mean, it's it's just one of those things where it's like, how are those two how are those two reserves? And I do like the fact, like I said, that it is a draft, and these players get to play with and against players that they don't usually get to play against. I mean, Steph playing will be playing against Clay. And KD actually, and so I mean, you just don't ever get to do that. So I like how it's formatted.
Yeah, if it were East versus West, then you would get another perhaps MLS All-Star game, which pits a team of the rest of the NBA against the Golden State Warriors, because that's pretty much what it would be, East versus West. So yeah, I like to see the format change it up a bit, would make things more interesting. So we'll move on to first half analysis. Now that we are just about at the All-Star break. Of course, at the end of tonight, we will officially be on All-Star break, and we'll start with Adam. Your surprise of the first half.
My surprise of the first half would have to be, well, we kind of talked about it too. I mean, the Washington Wizards. Obviously, they had an injury to John Wall. I think even before he went out, that it was a big surprise that they couldn't at least be, the top half of the Eastern Conference. When you look at him and Bradley Beal, and then they had some pretty good role players there with Otto Porter. There at the time, huge disappointment in Washington there, but my surprise would definitely have to be the Wizards.
So the Wizards, okay. Brian?
I would have to say the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, they've now given up the top spot in the West to the Warriors. But the way that they were able to come out and essentially, as we talked about, all the players and all the talent in the Western Conference, and to essentially lead the Western Conference for a good majority of the first half of the season, I think was definitely a surprise. They got some really young, good talent. I think that they're probably a year too early as far as where we expected them to be and where we kind of saw them trending with some of their picks and some of the moves that they've been able to make. But I think that the Nuggets were definitely kind of the biggest surprise, just given who they're up against and some of the wins and a few of the streaks that they were able to go on. Definitely early in the year and pluck off some of those teams like the Rockets and the Warriors and the Thunder in back-to-back nights, which was huge for a young team to be able to have that successful early.
Yeah, and my surprise will have to go with a tie between Denver and OKC. And the reason why I got OKC in there is because at the start of the year, OKC fans were calling for Billy Donovan's head. It was with Melo last year. It was literally the meme of when you think you got an A on the test, but actually you got an F. That was pretty much that team, as they were supposed to be a Western Conference contender, but they were out in the first round of the Utah Jazz, and I was pretty much the only one on NBA Twitter to call it too. Was that the Jazz were going to beat the Thunder in that first round series? But the Thunder have done very well. 3.5 games out of the first seed Golden State, but of course, if Golden State is Golden State, well, you won't see Golden State be anywhere but number one for years. So there's that. And
right.
Denver, and as Brian had, expanding on what Brian said, yes, Jokic has played a very great role in Denver's come up, and they seem to be a year early, like you had said. 2 games out of the first seed, which if they finish number 2 in the West, that'd be a great accomplishment for Denver. But so I will expand to my disappointment of the first half, and it's kind of obvious, but it's got to be the Pelicans for me. We would think that a team of Anthony Davis and Jrue Holiday and Nikola Mirotic, who has now been traded, and Elfrid Payton would be a top contender in the Western Conference, but they have just really struggled. And I posted it on my personal Twitter at TomTV23, so you guys should hit me up with a follow there. When Anthony Davis had said that he wanted to be traded, my first thought was they should never have fired Monty Williams in the first place years ago. I mean, the Pelicans gave Golden State in 2015, I would say, the best series of that playoff run, and that includes the Houston series, because they gave Golden State 4 tough games. And who knows, if that would have went 5 or 6 or 7, that could have beaten down Golden State, and perhaps you could have seen a different team in 2015. But after that, the Pelicans got rid of Monty Williams, and it's like, why the hell would you do that, Pelicans? That's exactly what I was thinking when it happened in 15. Why the hell did you do that? And I'm still saying the same thing today as far as the Pelicans. So, for me, surprise, a tie between OKC and Golden State. Disappointment, Pelicans. So, Brian, your disappointment of the first half.
Yeah, so it's a little bit tough for me. I was first going to kind of say the Celtics, just given their situation, what we saw last year, the talent that they had on the team, obviously getting their 2 stars back, and so a little disappointed, more so in the first half of this first half, I guess, because as we've seen here late, especially in the last couple of weeks, they started to string together a few good wins, other than that Laker buzzer beater that they had the other night. But
was Shannon Sharp happy about that?
I did see some of that. Actually, now that you say that,
which, as you've seen, my profile picture is of the now host of Undisputed, Jenny Taft, and she's been lucky to be on my profile picture for 6 years now. Stemming back to 2013. I actually met her way back in 2013 for the first time, so I've seen her just go from Fox Sports girl to Undisputed host, and I've said it, well, I never really actually said it to her, but it's kind of implied. If she can deal with Skip, she can deal with me.
Oh, that's great. You're easy then.
But yes, your disappointment, Celtics. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the Celtics, I think, but obviously they're too talented, they're too well coached that you're going to see that special tip for them. And so I think my other probably bigger disappointment is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have just constantly been trying to move pieces and get people in place to be able to compete in that Western Conference, to make it into the playoffs, to get a series win, and they just seem that no matter who they bring in there to coach or to play, and some of those with Cat and some of those in Wiggins, the guys that they have, high expectations, and thought maybe that they would be able to have a bigger impact this season than obviously where they're at right now at 27-30 in the 11th spot in the Western Conference. And so, I would say that maybe not as much of a disappointment specifically on this year as much as it is just the last couple of years here, with the Timberwolves and some of the expectations not fitting the bill, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I'll also tell you that one of my favorite coaches in the NBA, who is now unfortunately unemployed, is Tom Thibodeau. Because, well, one, him and I seem to have a similar work ethic. We like to work hard. In fact, I would probably be a tough NBA coach because I like to work my players hard. But the thing about Thibodeau is at some point you got to give the guys some rest. I mean, the first game that Robert Covington played for the Timberwolves, 41 minutes. Welcome to Minnesota, Robert Covington. But I liked his hard work ethic, but just like Doug Collins, it doesn't last very long in this NBA, and a voice like that just wears out from time to time. So that's a reason why one of my, well, I call him a rival because I'm a Michigan man, but Tom Izzo. That's why Tom Izzo wouldn't work in the NBA, is because he would just work his players too hard, and it would cost him his job, unfortunately, at the end. So love Tibbs. In fact, you could just replace my last name with Thibodeau, and there would be no difference in size and work ethic. But yeah, that's another very good point with the T-Wolves. So Adam, you already kind of gave us a disappointment. Was the Wizards?
I was just going to say that. I think I must have misheard you there. So I gave you my disappointment. How about I give you my surprise now?
Sure.
All right. So I have two surprises. And one is not necessarily a first half surprise, but it'd be the Indiana Pacers. Mostly since Oladipo went down. They've continued to play well, to beat teams that are a lot more skilled than they are, have a lot better players, even after their star player went down. But the first half of the year, I would have to say the Brooklyn Nets. With D'Angelo Russell kind of leading the way there, and them just having, in my opinion, just a lot of role players that are doing their job, and being the sixth seed in the East currently. They've beat some teams and exceeded expectations this year. So if I had to say one team in the NBA, I'd have to say the Brooklyn Nets.
And that's another good pick too, because Brooklyn has definitely exceeded expectations. And another little nugget about the Nets is their color analyst, Sarah Kustok, is another one of the umpteen reporters that I've met in my networking thread. In fact, my last game that I went to at the Palace was against Brooklyn, and Sarah was the sideline reporter at that time, and I got to say hi to Sarah and see Ian Eagle and Sarah Kustok do their pregame show for Yes Network. So, little nugget there about the Nets as well. So, yeah, I have a pretty solid sports resume, as you can tell. So that is your first half surprises and disappointments. And our last little nugget of the show, we're going to play a game called One In and One Out, meaning a team right now that's currently out of the playoffs that will find their way in, and vice versa. So we'll again keep the snake draft process going and go to Adam. First, your team that's currently out of the picture that finds their way in from each conference.
From each conference? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Western Conference. I'm going to go out to in the LA Lakers.
Okay.
With watching LeBron the last probably 5 or 6 years, this is kind of how his season usually goes. He, in my opinion at least, tries to get his a team involved, tries to let other guys do the work and stuff like that at the beginning of the year, and then once it comes time to kick it in, he does it, and he does whatever it takes to win. So I'm going with Lakers out to in, and then in to out. Out to in when I'm thinking about Eastern Conference. I'm going to have to go with the Miami Heat. I know they're actually tied for the as far as record goes with your Pistons, but looks like Pistons are hold a tiebreaker against them. So yes. I think they've been playing well. As far as teams that they beat, they do beat teams that sometimes they're a little overpowered against, and they keep it close against some of those teams when they don't. So I think they're going to kick it into gear here and really mesh as a team here in the second half, and I think they're going to be able to just sneak into the playoffs here. And
of course, the Heat have a veteran coach in Eric Spoelstra, who of course took the shots from Pat Riley before he became coach. So Spoelstra's
definitely been there a couple times.
Definitely. So good picks. Lakers in and Heat in. So the Heat is on. The Lakers, of course. Brian, you're one team out going in from each conference.
Yeah, so this isn't going to be much of a surprise. Actually, I had the same thing. I had the Lakers going in from the Western Conference. Many of the favorites, much that Adam mentioned. Obviously, that's a LeBron-led team. We know what LeBron does in half the season. So, but I think even more than that, the reason why those guys get in is because they have something to play for. Obviously, the goal isn't necessarily a championship this year, but it is to get some of those younger players some experience, so we can get in and hopefully they get out of these last few rounds. Have to play the Warriors right away, but if they can get in and get a serious win, it'll be huge for those young players moving forward. And as far as their way in. I think that Eagles farm will kind of play their way out. Looking at the on the East side of things, I agree with that again. I think the Heat, as you mentioned, with Smolsky, he just seems to find a way. Obviously back when he had the Heat over and those teams going, and it was whenever they lost, it was his fault. Couldn't quite figure it out, but I think that he was just a scapegoat. I think he's a great coach. I think he does some nice things both in game and X's and O's that will get the Heat in, which then will more than likely move your bad boys up there in Detroit out in the Eastern Conference playoff.
Good points. And as for mine, because it's now as for the snake draft process, I'll give you all 4 teams that I think. I agree with you guys as far as the East, it's going to be a swap between the Heat and Detroit. The Magic are, I would say, overperforming for where they are right now. But unfortunately, with a very, very young team like Orlando, that they're going to be going down. They're going to be going down, and hopefully, perhaps adding Zion to their team. We'll see about that. That's a conversation for another day. So as far as the East, I think the Heat and Pistons swap. As for Detroit, I guess I really don't know what the hell they were doing at the trade deadline. Thon Maker has done good things so far, and Mikhailuk is a Kansas guy. As we have discussed earlier, Kansas is the nemesis for Iowa, and of course Kansas has great players and a coach that who knows if his head will explode every time they make a bad play in Bill Self. So, Heat and Pistons swap. I'm going to give you a little surprise here because I like to throw in a little surprise to make sure the podcast stays interesting. I'm going to go Kings out to in, not Lakers. And the reason why, I think, is it's as far as LeBron's health. If LeBron suffers another injury like that, like he did to his groin, if he suffers another injury like that, they could go on another bad run and perhaps lose out in the playoffs and hope for Zion. But if LeBron stays healthy, you guys could very well be right that the Lakers will go out to in. So as for the Kings, David Yeager has led a team like this before to a playoff run. Remember the Grizzlies of a few years ago? They were basically a team that you would build in 2K, and he somehow took them to the second round of the playoffs. So, of course, if Sacramento gets into the playoffs, they'll be playing Golden State. So we'll see if the Dave Yeager 2K experiment works against that. But I could very well see a young team with Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox. I really like what they're doing in Sacramento, too, going to the playoffs and surprising a Lakers team that had finals aspirations that could be aspiring for Zion instead. As for the team that's going to drop out from this Western Conference, I want to say San Antonio, but I can't because Greg Popovich. The San Antonio has underperformed for their expectations, but because they're a Greg Popovich-led team, they will find a way to stay in the playoffs. I'm going to say the Clippers drop out because of the trade of Tobias and Boban. I'm gonna swap 8-9 seeds in both conferences. So let's see here. Brian has pretty much explained his in to out, which also was the Clippers. Anything to add on what I had explained there? Because I talked for a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I thought that you brought up some really good points, and like I said, obviously, I'm a LeBron fan, and so I'm rooting to get him into the playoffs, as I think every TV network and the NBA is as well. But on a personal side of things, like I said, I like the Kings as well. So it'd be a lot of fun and be interesting to see some of those young guys get in there. Like you said, it's like what do you win? You get the 8th seed, you get the playoffs. Oh, by the way, the Warriors are waiting for you. And so it's kind of a little bit of a raw deal for whoever doesn't end up making it. But I think it'd be fun to definitely get the Kings in there. Obviously, TV ratings would not, in that 8-1 matchup, would not quite be the same as if you had the real King in there, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I do feel that the Lakers would give the Warriors a much better matchup than the Kings. It won't the Kings Warriors matchup will not be like Pelicans Warriors of 4 years ago. That's for sure. So we'll toss it over to Adam. Your one team in that finds their way out from each conference.
So we kind of already talked about in the Eastern Conference. I think the Heat are going to replace the Pistons. In the East, and potentially maybe even the Hornets. I'm a Kemba guy. I love watching Kemba play, so I don't want to say the Hornets. So I'm just going to go with the Pistons there, like we already talked about. And in the Western Conference, I agree. I think the Clippers fall out, but I'm going to go with what you originally said, Tom. I'm going to go with the Spurs. I'm looking at their roster, and they have Marco Bellinelli, they have Pau Gasol, Rudy Gay, even LaMarcus Aldridge on this team that are, getting towards the end of their career. They're older players, and I know they have, DeMar DeRozan, obviously, who's an elite player. But an NBA season is going to start to wear on those old legs eventually. So I'm going to say that San Antonio Spurs drop out, and as well as the Clippers. So I'm saying Kings and Lakers both make it into the playoffs.
So Adam pretty much said, I like Tom's opinion and I like Brian's opinion. So why don't we go with both?
Just play in the middle here. Play in the middle.
Exactly. Michael Jackson is the man in the middle as well. Great song that talks a lot about change, which I think we all need to go through at some point in our lives. But that, again, another conversation for a different day. So good points there. And I will also add that Popovich is another worker. Just like Thibodeau, just like Collins, just like Izzo. Except Popovich really bonds with his players much better than Thibodeau or Collins. And that's how Popovich has been able to stay in the league for basically as long as I've lived. So, with that being said, I will ask the question that I always ask to wrap up the show. Is there anything else you guys have to add to this wonderful Tom Green podcast?
Man, I think that it was a good podcast here. We love, as you'll hear on our podcast, me and Brian just love talking basketball, whether that be Iowa college basketball, high school basketball, NBA. We've grown up around basketball our entire lives, so I know I can probably speak. I can probably speak for Brian when I say that we definitely enjoyed ourselves here, Tom.
Definitely, great deal. Brian, anything to add?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We appreciate it. We enjoy coming on. Obviously, it's fun to get another voice in the conversation, and with your experience and what you've been able to do, and to be able to navigate this ship and go through it. Made it a lot of fun, and we appreciate it. And hopefully we can do it again here sometime down the road.
Definitely. We definitely had a great show here. So follow these guys at Shooters Touch IA. He is Adam Viet. He is Bryan Claude. And this has been the Tom Green Podcast.